This is now. Oh, good.
Of the world, there's an island of trees, and they creak as they rustle in a whisper to the breeze, and the birds choir along to the lull of the sea as the petals of the parsley kiss farewell to the bees.
Walk with me from earth to legend as you enter into a world unencumbered by the bounds of reality. This is the story of Rakia and his brother Sheol. In the kingdom of heaven, there is a single god or goddess who must act as the gatekeeper to the spirit world and all its realms. At the turn of every century since the beginning of time, the youngest son or daughter of this gatekeeper inherits the right to rule this veil between divine and mortal. Sphera, the goddess of all things natural, sat at the seat of this highmost position at the time. In the 30th of her 100-year rule, she fell pregnant with 2 boys conceived at identical times, making them twins. She was the first amongst her long line of ancestors to have been bestowed this fate. As is the ancient tradition, upon birthing them, she blessed the twins with godly powers. Her son Rakia, she granted great wisdom and foresight, and Sheol, ambition and godly strength. As she watched them grow, each day she sat at the gates and looked down at the stars and up at the heavens, pondering on how she would decide which of her 2 sons would inherit her title. However, to distract her mind, she worked away at fashioning the most beautiful land she could possibly summon. She separated the sky and the water with the finest horizon of flora and fauna and yielded the most fertile soil in order to protect the living from the depths of the fire realm, Tehom. She placed this land on the face of the planet Earth and called it Alba. Time passed and Rakia and Sheol grew to the peak of their youthhood. It became known to them that it could only be one that inherits their mother's power, and she left it in their hands to determine who it shall be. Rakia, the wiser, knew that he could not beat his brother in a fight to the death, and so suggested a race. Sheol agreed to the race at once, without needing to hear his brother's terms. He was determined he could win regardless. And so it was, the two godly brothers were set to race. Rakia planned for this to take place on his mother's most beautiful creation, Alba, and would commence at the westmost point and cease at the eastmost. He also chose the forms in which they would both descend onto Alba, as gods were not allowed past the gates in their natural form. Rakia the wiser chose a large, imposing structure welded of the finest steel in which he would walk the race, and assigned to his brother a human form. Sheol, upon realizing this, was furious at his brother for binding him to mortality for this race, and vowed to get his own back on him. They descended onto earth to start their race across the widest point of the most beautiful land, as Pharaoh watched them from the heavens with great disdain. Rakia, in his large, intricate steel structure, moved slowly but steadily without tiring towards the finish line. Sheol, however, fluctuated in energy, sometimes gaining way, but often needing to lay down and rest. Towards the end of the race, however, just before he could see the eastern sea peek out before the hills, Rakia's steel structure grew rustier against the watery, blustery weather of Alba, and so he laid to rest for the first time in a large field under the protection of old oak trees. He rested for 3 days straight until his brother caught up to him one night. Sheol instantly knew this was his opportunity to sway his way into inheriting the gates of heaven. Whilst Rakia rested, Sheol weaved carefully amongst the rustly bushes to where his brother lay resting like a beaten ox. He saw this weakness and decided Rakia deserved exactly what is about to come his way, that no god as weak as his brother should ever gain the keys to any kingdom. And so, he wielded his godly strength to deform Rakia's steel bars, welding them deep into the ground, rooting him into that same position for the rest of eternity. Sheol, impressed with his work and engulfed by the ambition of inheriting Kingdom Come, ran in his human form to the eastmost point of Alba. "I've won," he thought to himself as he danced with glee. But he quickly noticed that something was wrong. At the end of the race, he was certain that he would be instantly transported back into his godly form. But he remained a man.
"You fool!"
Boomed his mother's voice from above.
"Your vaulting ambition has turned your thoughts into greenly spikes. A venomous plague you have brought upon earth, and the kingdom of heaven as we know it."
Sheol cowered and ran straight back to where he left Rakia to work out what his mother's message meant. When he got there, he realized what he had done. When he welded Rakia's steel into the ground, he penetrated Alba's fertile soil. This meant that he had undone all of his mother's efforts to separate the mortal world from the fiery realms of Tehom. In doing so, Rakia's steel slowly melted, causing Tehom to overflow into the mortal world and flood into the heavens. The world as we know it ceased to exist. Sphera watched from above as her boys were engulfed in flames, grieving the death of her sons instantly and writhing from the pain of severing thousands of years of tradition. She descended onto earth as the flames died out, as a ghostly hag dressed in mourning veil from top to toe, and wept for her boys. What grief, what sorrow, all at the cost of mortal greed. She stood amongst the ruins and decided she would bind herself to her mystical, earthly form and reap the chaos of what was left of the world for the rest of eternity.
Let's go.